I think the world of AI has obviously changed and made my life very simple. And I think there's huge scope around it. But then there are a lot of pitfalls as well. And I think the pitfalls are coming up much faster.
If you're going to use AI in shortlisting, there's this whole concern about bias.
It's not processing anything that you mentioned in projects. It's not meant, even looking at your cover letter for some of the jobs. Simply looking at those keywords and saying, Gautam's CV is junk. Let me throw it out.
Many times we use a lot of market data, we use a lot of synthetic data because we don't know, let's say if you take the same MasterCard, we don't have MasterCard's last 5 years of hiring data to really say, right, what's it that you look for?
The more a recruiter understands the role, their chances of getting through like this long list of CVs with quality output is far higher. Like I said, the example of that chatbot talking to me, I like it whenever it pops up. Like I make a joke with my wife, see there are other women digitally enabled who want to talk to me apart from you. But that's the fun part of it. At least I remember, right?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again for another episode of Hyreo Rise series, where we talk about recruiting, talent acquisition, talent management, different aspects of HR that we've seen in the past. And it's an exciting session for me personally today because I've got somebody who has dabbled with different aspects of HR with us today. He's been a leader in the space of talent management, talent development, talent acquisition. He is an advisor, consultant, keynote speaker, worked and led businesses and HR functions across multiple geographies. A pleasure to welcome Gautam onto our show today. Thank you so much, Gautam, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Arun. It's a pleasure to be here.
I can't thank you more because especially in that specific time frame when we are meeting for this session, Gautam, because there's a lot of talks about the topic that we are going to handle today, which is about how do we use AI more effectively at the ground level as far as recruiters are concerned? And your experience, and you've been vocal about that on multiple occasions as well. Having you on this to have a very candid, pragmatic view of how recruiters are using AI and how they can use it even better. I think nobody better than you, Gautam. But for the audience sake, would love to hear a little introduction about yourself, and then we'll get it started off right there.
I think I should start off by saying I'm not a core HR guy. I'm a technologist who ended up being in HR. So technology is very core to the way I think. While I like technology, I might not be so good at it. So obviously there's a learning curve for everybody. But I think the world of AI has obviously changed and made my life very simple. And I think there's huge scope around it. But then there are a lot of pitfalls as well. And I think the pitfalls are coming up much faster than the adoption rates. So I think we'll dwell on that. But personally, I think there is huge opportunity for everybody. I don't want people to generate manual reports. I just want them to look at data insights and have conversations rather than churning data sitting in their laptop. So yeah, that's what I think and believe. Eventually, as human race, we'll get there. But there are leaps and strides that HR has to take.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Gautam. So in our episode today, everybody who's joining us from different parts of the world, we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting in particular and the use of AI throughout this life cycle. So if you take recruiting away from shortlisting somebody to screening or interviewing somebody to making negotiations with them in terms of their job contract to all the way they're getting onboarded. Let's break this whole process down and see how has AI helped. What are those challenges that we see as you see the first wave of tools and products that are coming up in that space? And then we'll try and look at it from the perspective of what we've learned practically, what we have experienced practically in this next 20-25 minutes or so. So let me start with the tough part, what recruiters usually go through, which is around shortlisting. Especially talent supply markets like India or even large markets like North America, you have a lot of applicants. And I was recently in an event in Boston where we had one of those speakers who's a co-founder and CTO of a very, very large AI company. I don't want to take names, but he mentioned that he gets 25,000 applicants for a technology job posting that he might have. And that starts really with the problem. So I want to hear your views on if you're going to use AI in shortlisting. There's this whole concern about bias. Is the AI's judgment of the profile, has it matured enough? Is it something that you can you can kind of depend on? What do you think is the level of fairness and capability that it has today?
I don't believe it's AI at work right now. I think it's more of the algorithms at work, because they're simply processing the data that they were trained on, right? So if the biasness was there in the data to say, okay, you have to have 5 skill sets on your CV, and that's where you will become a top applicant for a particular job. That application tracking system is just looking at that. It's not processing anything that you mentioned in projects. It's not even looking at your cover letter for some of the jobs. It's simply looking at those keywords and saying, Gautam's CV is junk. Let me throw it out. That's, I think, the initiation part of the problem is when people have deployed or even bought platforms and have sort of trained their bots or algorithms on the data set, have we used the logic of an unbiased data source? If that has not happened, right, everything else is just a result of that. Because I think that the algorithms are not there yet in terms of making a very sound decision making, right? They're not looking at who would be the best fit. They're simply looking at, do you match the persona that's been given to me? And these are, this is data to data comparison. That's one. I think there is another part of the problem. And that part of the problem is when a recruiter is setting up, a job posting, or they're setting up these filters to say, okay, this is a job opening, and you end up getting 25,000 CVs. How many of them are relevant? If it is a 20% hit rate, you're very lucky, right? We get about 7,000 CVs, but about 70% of them don't even match what we're looking at, right? So are there more checks and balances that you could do? And those checks and balances can only come if the recruiter actually understands what the job will take. Because I think that's also a miss. A lot of times our recruiters or our sourcing people, because they have that sheer load of work, they're not spending time understanding what the job is. They're simply looking at, this is a product role. This is the job description. If Gautam has it in his CV and can, throw these keywords out, and shortlisting, without knowing that maybe I've read it on ChatGPT. Right? That's one other aspect. So I think it's sort of a balance for AI and for the recruiter to sort it out. But in my personal experience, what I've seen is the more a recruiter understands the role, their chances of getting through like this long list of CVs with quality output is far higher than somebody simply relying on an ATS or just the bots or the applications you put through. Personally, I saw a job opening in MasterCard back in 2019. I applied. Within a day, I got a rejection email. I said, okay, maybe I'm not qualified. 3 months later, I was headhunted for the same role by the hiring manager. And when I went in and applied again in the ATS, it said, you've already applied. You can't apply again. You have to use another email ID. So that's sort of the problem, is the checks and balances are not meeting the business requirement. And hence you will have all sorts of applications, but no quality in those applications.
Yeah, I kind of agreed to what you said. And I also have seen this in many organizations, but the point specifically about data, which you first mentioned, I think is a major handicap that most AI systems today have. For example, we work a lot on trying to identify or profiling CVs before, the team can actually talk to them. Many times we use a lot of market data, we use a lot of synthetic data because we don't know, let's say if you take the same MasterCard, we don't have MasterCard's last 5 years of hiring data to really say, what's it that you look for? But I kind of have the feeling that might still be a challenge for many companies, many data models to come in the days as well. But the second aspect that you mentioned, which is primarily around how effectively are our teams understanding the need for having that clarity in defining jobs or roles, and that helps systems to identify better. I think that's a change that a lot of teams are now doing, and I've seen recruiters who are becoming more and more careful in terms of what needs to be there and what need not be there. And that's an area where AI can definitely help in making sure that the quality of job descriptions, the quality of the outreach, what you send out to candidates, can really change. For example, when you said about your own job application, this means that we're still relying on very old ways of email-led authentication, and hence, so there are different dynamics that comes into play. But I think you're absolutely right. Data needs to cleanse itself. The demand side of requirements needs to be more clear, and that's definitely going to put a lot of effort, savings in effort for sure. Now, assume that we do have a good number of profiles. Even, I take the same example of 7,000 applicants that you're getting every job today, and let's assume 10% of them are still relevant. Your problem has come down in terms of, numbers, but 700 is still a fairly large number to look at in terms of relevant profiles. That's where struggling, the recruiter struggles again. I need to be able to screen quickly. So efficiency is key there. So your take on efficiency that comes in with AI tools or algorithmic models, how does that augment the human aspect, the human element of, having that beautiful conversation, that first conversation with the candidate? How does that balance in your view?
No, you're right. I think that even with 700 profiles, there has to be like that second level of automated check, right? It just can't be, hey, it matches, quality is there, and we're assuming that the quality is there because that's what the report says. And hence my point on, do the recruiters understand what the role is? Because, taking the same example of product management, a product owner is very different from a product manager, right? But if you're not understanding like those thin fine lines between different roles, even with the quality output of the AI, right, or with the system, the challenge will still remain that how do you go ahead and check for the next level of screening. What I've seen fairly in the past is the challenge is that we'll want to go with something that we know, right? So we'll give it another sort of filtering process and say, okay, out of these, how many are relevant in the industry, right? Or similar industry to mine, or how many would have, relevant experience, or how many would have, an X factor or a Y factor. I think in order to get there, the entire HR teams across, including me, across the world, we need to understand the system that we're working on far better. Because today what we have is there's a system administrator who fairly understands the working on the system, and I'm using it as an end user, right? So for me, there are just a few options, and I'll go through the pains of, hey, let me get this added, let me get that added. So I don't really understand what the system is. I'm just trying to play with whatever is available to me. So I think that's where we need to upskill as individuals. But with AI, obviously the challenge gets solved in terms of efficiency. The time management is absolutely there. But that time management is as good as the user's input, right? I can still end up not selecting the right sort of 20 people to call up as top priority out of those 700, given I don't understand, right, how my system works, or what is that thin fine line between two different roles. One thing I've seen recently is the factor that people are okay going to other industry as long as the profile matches sort of what the future of the role will be. And I think that's where the systems will eventually pick up. So that view from the AI that would come from, let's say, 2 or 3 years from now would be, hey, you're hiring a vice president of X role, but in future, this role is going to develop into these two streams, and these 5 candidates already have that experience. Maybe you want to talk to them first. I think we'll eventually get there with more of data training available, but we're not there yet. I think we're still just trying to figure out who's that best possible lot to call up and speak to. I was recently in discussion with somebody, and they had this AI chatbot, which I found very interesting, because while we had our first round of conversations, and I said, no, sort of the role doesn't match, I'm not the right fit for you, but the AI chatbot keeps talking to me every now and then. Hey, we have another role that's available. So rather than that static email that lands up saying, oh, we have these 20 jobs available, be a part of our talent community, this thing just pops up. It says, hey, how are you doing? This is a role, matches 3 things on your CV. Would you want to explore it with us? Just say yes or no, right? So that candidate engagement is much higher, right? And my perception about the organization is fairly positive right now, because they're sort of nudging me again and again about their brand. You get so many emails saying, oh, 20 jobs, 5 recruiters have seen your profile, blah, blah. You don't want to open those emails also. Like, you end up reporting them as junk. But this one's fairly new. And I think that has that model of engagement to it as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is something that we also do, Gautam, as part of our product. But before I come to that, what I liked is when you kind of sliced it down, saying that, hey, we still need algorithms to mature, and recruiters still have a big role in terms of screening and shortlisting candidates. The other side of it, where do I need to spend the same 10 hours, or I can get it done in an hour's time in terms of the duration? I think a lot of AI has now been quite successful. Algorithms have been successful in that. And I do agree on the fact that, if you had to have legacy systems to engage with candidates like the way you explain, nudging them, telling them what it is. End of the day, I think one part of the job application from a candidate's perspective is the role. And the other aspect obviously is about the brand. The person applies for a company, I apply for Google, that itself is one part of the process. And the second part of the process is, hey, do I want to be in this business unit doing this product management here? Or can I do something in a similar different BU or a project where I'm still doing product management as a role? So there's a lot more flexibility that comes in if you're able to make that candidate angle smooth. And my next question also is related to that, and it's a good segue to that. What do you think candidates think about AI shortlisting them? So if you remember a few years back when CV parsers came to the market, and we had a bunch of them actually fitted on top of ATSs and HCMs, and then we were doing a lot of keyword-based one. And then the world shifted, put every keyword in there, one-on-one matching to your job description, your chances are higher, then, stack it in such a way that the parsers pick you up. But in terms of today, AI becoming more transformative in that sense, more capable in that sense for assessing and profiling candidates better. From somebody who's on the ground figuring out and talking to so many candidates, what's your feeling of, does it really ease the candidate's concern when they say that, hey, AI is going to evaluate, rather there's less of human involvement? AI does a great job of ensuring that, your profile gets the same weightage as anybody else. And does that really help candidates, or you feel the other way around?
I think it's sort of a journey. While people liked the ATS when it was initially launched and eventually hated it and then tried to hack it, and still hate it, right? I think with AI and so with humans, right? The challenge is, obviously, the recruiter's challenge is the volume, right? And the candidate's challenge is engagement, right? And it's very easy to lose the brand image in front of a candidate who's applying, especially if you're not doing that engagement bit correctly, right? I know a lot of people feel very proud of the fact that we send them a follow-up email. I make a bank transaction, my bank sends me an email. There's no God sent thing that you've done differently. So obviously it's a journey. And from the candidates that I've spoken to, or at least I would say at a more senior level, we are quite, aware of the fact that you got to engage with them, right? And that human engagement happens. But when you look at, early career roles, because of the sheer volume, we've not built out a beautiful engagement model, whether it's with AI or whether it's non-AI, right? And that's what is the missing key. If you don't have a good engagement model, which is not telling them where in the process you are, if you're asking them to go into a portal, log in, remember your password, they forget it. Remember, you're not the only organization they're applying for. They're looking for a job. They would be applying for 20 organizations, like you're looking at 7,000 applications. So it's working both ways. For them to log in and check more periodically to see, I'm still in review, right? I'm still in review. And then middle of the night, your system plans to send out an email at 1 o'clock a.m. Eastern saying, hey, sorry, not shortlisted, not a good way to go. So candidates eventually would not, understand whether this is AI or whether this is human. This comes across as a brand doing this, right? So as an employee of a huge brand, I would, we highly recommend not doing that, especially not midnight. Even if it doesn't match, let's give them things to, at least reflect on, rather than saying, oh, you're not a good match. But we'll keep your CV on our data. And for our data privacy policies go here. They don't care, right? Their CV is going to change 2 years from now. So I think that's where we should go. If you're saving time in processing all of this data, I think that human interaction is very required. And if not a human interaction, at least an engagement with the candidate. If you're deploying a system, an AI chatbot can easily, speak to thousands of people at the same time. It doesn't go one by one. So please have that in place, because as a candidate, it feels very, very frustrating to not hear from somebody and suddenly they appear and say, oh, you know what, you're shortlisted. Do you have time today? Let's do an interview today. I'm like, why the rush? Where were you? For 5 months you were gone. Suddenly you have this rush, right? Not the right step to do. And a lot of people still feel that they can hack the system, right? I still come across a lot of these services where they are still helping you, sort of rewrite your CVs to pass through the system. So wherever those systems exist, right? They're still active. People are still using those services, which tells us that we're very far away from an AI making a very sound decision based on data. It is still going with keywords. So I think that's what my view is. And like I said, the example of that chatbot talking to me, I like it whenever it pops up. Like I make a joke with my wife, see, there are other women digitally enabled who want to talk to me apart from you. But that's the fun part of it. At least I remember, right? Versus somebody sending me an email.
Yeah, I think, Gautam, see, we live in a world where when you place order online for even provision, you know exactly where your order is. Yeah,
exactly.
Is it left the store? Is it on the way? Is it reached my zip code? Is it somewhere close to me? I know everything. So, when we build our systems, one of the things that we try to make sure is tell them realistically what's happening with your acquisition. Tell them exactly what's your average time usually takes for a shortlist to be done, or from an interview stage, how long does it take to get to some other point? Because many a times candidates are prioritizing. They have multiple other opportunities. And if it's a good talent, they're going to have even more opportunities to kind of push their application in. It's us who lose out on them and not actually them. So the engagement per se on traditional systems obviously are much limited, but that's kind of improving. And the view on candidates, you're personally experiencing that and feeling good about how you were nudged and told about things that are happening in the organization, or even matching jobs that are potentially something that you can look at is great. And I think that's the future, because there's a lot of engagement that will come in before you can get them to apply for jobs even. And I think that will essentially take over because you're looking at top talent as opposed to a lot of volumes, let's say 3, 4, 5 years from now, let's say.
Right.
Now, the other aspect that recruiters usually want some sort of a co-pilot or some sort of an assistance is about that stage when you're negotiating that job contracts and those final stages when you're structuring the whole proposition to the candidate, right? Now, there's certain platforms that you can get some direct insights. There are AI platforms which are giving a lot of market insights as well. Do you see that that's a positive? Do you think that more personal touch makes negotiations work at that stage? What are some of your learnings, Gautam, in terms of when you're ready to offer a candidate?
I think the world is dealing with two problems. And I was talking to one of the leaders yesterday. The problem is when my guy has to go, it has to be like today. When I have to hire somebody, they would typically take their own sweet time, which is 2 months, 3 months, right? Maybe a little less, but nothing less than 30 days. So how do you solve for it, right? I think, so from my experience, what I believe is a negotiation obviously is far better when you know the person and you've spoken to that individual many times, right? If you've just been talking to them about, let me schedule your discussion, let me do this, let me do that, more administratively, and suddenly you come to the table and you start doing negotiations on the job. I think anybody across career levels would not feel that comfortable doing it with you, right? You got to build that rapport. That's where the AI can assist you, right? That's where it can help build that logic, saying, hey, you will eventually speak to Gautam, who's going to do your offer negotiations. You've been speaking to him. He's been helping you, schedule everything for you. Somebody has to set that context for the individual to come in and have that discussion. I know some recruiters personally are very good at it. They will tell you upfront as to what the process is, what is going to be their role in it, when can you reach out to them. They would give you a call personally just for 2 minutes to say, hey, congratulations, you're moving to the next round. Hopefully we'll get to that discussion. So when I sit across the table with them, I fairly understand what they're saying, right? And that trust factor is very high. That's one. The other one is they are also very confident about making, the negotiations work, is because they want to get you in, right? They're not there to shoot you down. And I can get that confidence from them when their policies are very friendly and they are very happy about it. I think all the paperwork from the back end, and we also use like multiple systems to outsource, background verifications, to getting your data on our HRMS and stuff like that. Let that play at the back end. That's where the AI should play its job. Let the automation work. But essentially important is for me to understand what the role of this individual is, right? And when they do the offer negotiations, yes, the data coming from the market is very important, because as an applicant, I may not know what are the ranges that are happening today. Yes, the insights are very important as to how the growth of the organization has been, right? And what is the career trajectory that's available to you from here on? Because a lot of people are not just joining based on what you put on the table. A lot of people are joining saying, what you have on the table is great. What would you have for me 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line? I think we've shifted from the fact of, all right, I'm getting a 20% hike and I'm going to go join that place, to I'm not getting a 20% hike, but I know another 2 years from now, I'll get the next level, right? And I see a lot of younger people taking the second route. They don't want to engage with AI. Obviously, they want to talk to somebody, but the AI can obviously enable those recruiters to negotiate better.
Right, Gautam. And I think in most places, the negotiation is not a one stage also, right? Especially you have in a lot of places where, because candidates could have multiple offers, and the cycle time for them to join us is a fairly long time, was what we call as post-offer to onboarding or pre-onboarding stage that we are talking about. There might be need for multiple conversations, building that confidence, giving them the the comparison, and giving our perspective of what we think we could do better just in case, the person has a different offer or something. Now, we've seen a lot of such use cases where, especially our module, which is pointed at the selection stage candidates, where it's about having those meaningful conversations where for us, AI is about being that conduit, making sure that the nudges lead to meaningful conversations. Issues which are reported by the candidate is recorded, traced, and you have holistic org-wide data on where am I losing my candidates on, what is happening, which is leading to churn. So I think AI could put together data for sure, but at least the last mile has to be personal. That's how I believe most organizations would think too.
And I think one thing beyond AI is also the factor of having a policy which is for today and for human beings to work for you, right? I'm typically talking India as a market, right? India as a market, for any major IT organization, you have a 90-day notice period, right? There are people who've saved money and they're like, I'm walking out of the door today, right? Some people use it for offer shopping as well, right? I know a lot of organizations who shifted from a 90 to a 30-day. Obviously, you want to reduce your churn and somebody else who doesn't want to work there and they're looking for career growth. You want to make that churn faster. I understand the business implication and, the handover and stuff like that. But how many of those 90 days actually do like a very actual handover? 2%, 3% of the population. That's what the survey says. The remaining 90+% is just passing time to get out of the door. I think if fundamentally that gets fixed, we will see less of our good talent actually doing offer shopping. Because think about this. If I'm supposed to join somebody in April, and I somehow got this confidence that I'm in, right? So I can crack other places as well. Now I will start meeting every job that comes my way. And then I'm going to sit down on the table and say, okay, out of these 6 jobs that I have today, which one I'm going to pick? And then suddenly you feel bad that, oh, my dropout rate is higher. Look at your own candidates, You make as a policy or a norm in the market that, we'll hire faster, if you don't want to be here, that's absolutely fine. That also sends a message to the people in the market that if I get through, I can actually start working Monday. I think that works very well in the North America markets because people don't stay there for more than a week. Like end of the week, they're gone, which is great. At least next week or at least 2 weeks in there, you will have somebody new. Here, I don't have anybody new for 90 days. And then that new person comes in who's pretty old and has heard all the gossip, has gone through the glass door. AI has helped him not to be oriented the right way. So I think that also poses a challenge eventually for recruiters because then they are dealing with a dropout rate, which is extremely high.
True that, Gautam. It's been a fascinating conversation so far, Gautam. And I'm just looking at the time and I realize we spent a very, very good amount of time talking about potential plus and minus. But if I was to summarize, Gautam, I think there's a lot that you believe efficiency in terms of time is a huge factor.
Absolutely.
There's a huge amount of back-end processing that can be automated, which helps recruiters. Insights, market information, behavioral patterns that, of course, AI can do a lot quicker analysis for you. But having said that, AI is still going to be helping recruiters make more meaningful conversations on one side. There are still issues that we could do better in terms of that selection to onboarding timeline, for example, or how we are dealing with that cycle time and how do we make it more effectively. Do we need to move away from the older generation ATSs or basic set of tools into more modern ones, which can actually make life better? I think there's a lot of consensus on some of these points also across the board. Any last 30 seconds that you want to give our audience, some bit of advice in terms of where they can get some quick wins on AI or where they shouldn't use AI?
I think very important to understand the AI system that's there in your ecosystem, right? Let's not read the AI report that IBM has for technologists. That's not going to help the recruiters. Read something which you're going to end up using in your day-to-day as a tool, or your aspirational tool that you want, right? I think that's the learning that we all have to do. Quick wins is the moment you understand what all capabilities are available today in the market, right? You can then start pushing for what all would you need apart from that. That could be your quick win. You don't really have to have somebody send out, call you up and say, hey, are you available this time? Let me set up your conversation. There is Calendarly available. All consultants use it. It's there today, but the recruitment team isn't using it. Well, why aren't they using it? Isn't there a version available for candidates to say, okay, I'm available on this slot, let me set up time, and automatically gets there. You come in and have the conversation. You coming in to set up time. We're not growing you as individuals. We're not growing the organization as such, right? So I think that those are aspirational things people should start looking at, start building that out, and start pushing our partners to say, okay, we need this capability, because I really don't want to call up people to check for their time. I actually want to sit down and understand why this person never did his MBA and have empathy towards it. So, have that built in. There's a lot of information on AI, so we have to filter out what's relevant for us. And let's not get carried away also. Not everything will be solved by them. There's a lot of things that we'll have to solve internally in our houses as well.
Lovely. I think that's a piece of advice that every recruiter should start focusing on. Learn as much as you can, which is relevant to you, and start taking those baby steps and start using AI more. And that's going to get you smarter and more effective on the ground. On that note, once again, thank you so much, Gautam, for being part of this episode. We loved having you, all those interactions that we typically have. And you having time for the session. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gautam, to be part of this.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Arun.